Kai rushed through the crowded spaceport, his satchel bouncing against his side. He could feel the excitement in his chest, the nervous energy of someone about to take their first real step into the stars. Today was supposed to be simple. Board the Starliner Horizon's Dawn, find his assigned cabin, and begin the journey to the mining colony on Virex 4. It should have been straightforward. But the terminal was busy. Ships came and went in bursts of flashing lights. Announcements echoed over the speakers in a dozen different languages, and people pushed past him in every direction. Kai was not used to so much chaos. He checked the schedule again. The big white ship across the docking bay looked just like the one in the terminal hologram. Its hull was smooth, clean, and bright. He didn't notice the subtle differences, the scratches, the marks of age, or the faint humming that seemed to come from its frame. He was too focused on catching the right flight. In the rush, he walked down the gangway and boarded. Inside, the air was cool but carried a strange metallic scent. Kai paused, looking around. The corridors were wide, but dimly lit. Shadows seemed to stretch farther than they should. The walls pulsed faintly, almost as if they were breathing. He shook his head. He was tired, maybe imagining things. The crew should be here any moment. "Excuse me?" he said to a tall figure in the hall. The being turned its head slowly. Its skin was pale, almost gray, and its eyes reflected the dim light in a way that felt wrong. It did not smile. It did not speak. It only stared. Kai swallowed. I'm looking for my cabin. Number 12B. The figure did not respond. It simply nodded and moved down the corridor, gliding rather than walking. Kai followed hesitantly, noticing more of them appearing around the ship, silent and watchful. Something about them was deeply unsettling. He felt as if they were aware of every thought he had, every fear he carried. As he turned a corner, the corridor stretched farther than expected. He passed rooms with labels he could not read, symbols that pulsed faintly. He opened a door at random, hoping to find someone to ask, but the room was empty. Strange shapes hung from the walls, tools, weapons, objects that seemed older than time itself. Kai stepped back, feeling a chill. The air grew heavier. A soft hum started deep inside the ship. At first he thought it was the engines, but the sound was different. It had rhythm, like a heartbeat, and somehow it seemed to call his name. Kai, it whispered, though he could not place if it was inside his mind or outside. He spun around. No one was there. The corridor was empty, silent except for the hum. Kai's curiosity overcame fear. He walked further into the ship, exploring. He had always been fascinated by old technology, by things no one else could understand. These halls were filled with it. Panels of glass and metal displayed strange lights. Crystals hummed faintly, as if storing knowledge too vast for humans. He reached out to touch one. The moment his fingers brushed it, the air seemed to shift. Lights flickered, and he caught a glimpse of something moving in the corner of his eye, long, shadowy shapes that disappeared when he looked directly. "Hello?" he called again, more firmly. Still nothing answered. The ship was alive, but not in a way he could understand. It was old, older than anything he had known, and it was watching him. Hours seemed to pass. Kai tried to find the bridge or any sign of a friendly crew. Everywhere he went, the corridors twisted and bent. The ship was a maze. He realized with a start that no matter which direction he turned, he ended up back near the central hall, where a pulsing light shone faintly on the floor. It was beautiful, almost hypnotic, and he felt a strange pull toward it. He sat down near the pulsing light, exhausted and frustrated. His satchel slipped from his shoulder. He reached for it, only to find the tools and supplies inside had changed. Small devices now hummed faintly, glowing in a way they had not before. Confused, Kai stood and looked around. The walls seemed to pulse faster, the corridors breathing with a rhythm that matched his own heartbeat. A door opened across from him, and a figure stepped out. Not one of the pale crew members this time. This one looked human, or at least like a human, but with odd features. Its skin was golden, almost metallic. Its eyes were deep pools of black, reflecting the pulsing light. "You are new," it said in perfect English, though its voice carried an echo, as if multiple voices spoke together. Kai nodded, too stunned to speak. I think I'm on the wrong ship," he managed. The figure tilted its head. "Perhaps. But it is not so simple. Once aboard, the ship knows. It watches. It learns. You are seen now." "Seen? By who?" Kai asked, his voice trembling. The figure did not answer directly. Instead, it gestured toward the central hall. "The hunger waits. It has waited for 500 years. and now it watches you. Kai froze. The word hunger echoed in his mind. Hunger? Was it a person? A creature? He didn't understand. His stomach tightened, and an instinctive fear rose in his chest. 500 years? That's impossible. I just boarded. The figure's black eyes reflected something ancient. Time aboard this vessel is not what you know. The ship bends it. The hunger bends it. What is 500 years to it? A moment. And now, Kai, you are part of it. Before he could respond, the figure disappeared, fading into the shadows. The hum in the walls grew louder. Kai's pulse raced. He realized something terrifying. The ship was alive, and the crew he had seen were not truly alive. They were extensions, vessels, controlled by something far beyond him. He moved quickly through the corridors, trying to find an exit. Every turn led him deeper into the ship's maze. Rooms shifted before him. Doors led to rooms he had already been in, yet they looked slightly different, older or newer, as if time itself was unstable here. A faint light flickered at the end of a hallway. Kai approached, hoping it was an airlock or a bridge. Instead, he found a room filled with relics, tools from long-gone civilizations, pieces of ships from distant galaxies, and glowing artifacts that seemed to store energy or knowledge beyond understanding. Each object hummed faintly, as if alive. Kai reached for one. The moment his fingers touched it, visions flashed before his eyes. Distant planets, empty cities, shadows moving in the streets, and beings that were not quite alive. He pulled back, gasping. The hunger. The visions were a message, or a warning. The hunger had already consumed worlds, and it had its eyes on him now. Panic rose in him. He ran through the corridors, trying doors at random, searching for a control room, a bridge, anything that could help him understand what he had gotten himself into. The ship seemed to respond to his fear, corridors stretching longer, doors appearing and disappearing, walls breathing with a rhythm that seemed to mock him. Hours passed, though he could not tell for sure. The hunger's presence grew stronger. It did not speak directly, but in his mind he felt its awareness, like icy fingers brushing against his thoughts. He realized that it was testing him, watching how he reacted. The ship pulsed in tune with his fear, almost feeding on it. Exhausted, Kai finally collapsed in the corner of a large chamber. The pulsing light in the center filled the room, bathing him in a dim, shifting glow. He could hear the soft hum of the ship everywhere, a sound that had become almost comforting and terrifying at the same time. Sleep came, but it was not peace. His dreams were filled with shadows, whispers, and visions of a future where he was hunted, consumed, and forgotten. When he woke, the corridors had shifted again. The figure with black eyes appeared once more. "You are learning," it said softly. "The hunger sees, and it waits. Your journey has begun, Kai, whether you wish it or not." Kai felt a chill run down his spine. He wanted to escape, to return to the world he knew, to the ordinary life he had left behind. But it was too late. The ship had claimed him. And somewhere, deep in the core of the eternal hunger, an ancient awareness stirred, sensing the new life aboard. It had waited centuries for someone like him. Someone curious, brave, human. And now, the game had begun. The corridors seemed darker now, the pulsing light more insistent. Every sound was amplified. Every shadow felt like it could move on its own. Kai stood, gripping his satchel tightly. He did not know what lay ahead, but he understood one thing clearly. He was not just a passenger. He was the prey. And the hunger was patient. It had 500 years of patience, and it had just begun to take notice. Kai could not sleep. The ship hummed all around him, soft and steady, but it felt alive, watching. Every sound seemed amplified. Every shadow seemed to move on its own. He sat up in the corner where he had collapsed, rubbing his eyes. He needed to understand what he had gotten himself into. The eternal hunger was no ordinary ship. The warnings, the visions, the strange crew, all of it pointed to something far older and more dangerous than anything Kai had known. He decided to explore again, slowly, carefully. He left the corner and moved through the twisting corridors. The walls pulsed faintly, and the air felt thick. Every turn seemed familiar and yet wrong. The ship's layout was not fixed. It shifted. Doors led to rooms he had never seen before, and hallways looped back on themselves. He had no idea how long he had been aboard, but the hours felt like days, and the days like minutes. As he walked, he noticed signs of life, or at least of the past. Some rooms contained relics of civilizations long gone. Strange machines hummed softly, untouched by time. On a table, there were small orbs of light, suspended in midair, glowing faintly. "You vision passed up. I Oh, I have faith. Then a shadowed hand reached for him, and he pulled back quickly, gasping. The image disappeared as soon as he moved his hand. Kai's heart pounded. The ship seemed to test him. It was not just a vessel. It was alive in a way he could not fully understand. He continued walking, taking small steps, trying to stay calm. That was when he heard a voice, soft, faint, almost a whisper in his mind. Kai. He froze. The voice was not spoken aloud. It was in his head. His pulse quickened. "Who's there?" he asked aloud, though he knew no one would answer. The voice came again, clearer this time. "Do not be afraid. You are not alone." Kai spun around, searching the hall. A figure emerged from the shadows, moving slowly. She was young, human, but her eyes were strange, bright, almost glowing faintly. Her clothes were worn and torn, like someone who had traveled long and far. "My name is Lyra," she said. I've been here for a long time. I don't remember how long exactly." Kai's chest tightened. You've been on this ship? How? What is this place?" Lyra shook her head, her eyes distant. "I don't remember much. Only pieces. The hunger, it watches us. It waits. It learns. And it feeds on fear. I don't know why I'm still here, but maybe because I didn't give it what it wanted." Kai felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard enough to know this was dangerous. The ship had a predator, a sentient hunger that had waited centuries, and now it had its eyes on him. "Wait, hunger?" he asked. "You mean like it wants to eat us?" Lyra shook her head. "Not exactly. It wants more than food. It wants life, fear, memories, even your mind. It is patient. 500 years patient, and it never tires." Kai swallowed hard. He could feel his own fear rising. His stomach tightened, and he felt faintly dizzy. "So, it's hunting us, in a way," Lyra said softly, "but it doesn't have to. The ship, the hunger, it tests, it waits. It learns from us, from everything we do." Kai tried to steady his breathing. He had to think clearly. Panic would only make things worse. "Then we have to find a way out," he said. "We have to escape." Lyra looked at him, eyes wide. "Escape? That's complicated. The ship is alive. It shifts. The corridors, they are not fixed. Every time you think you're moving forward, you're moving deeper. And the hunger, it senses everything. Fear, hesitation, even hope." Kai's mind raced. How could he fight something like that? He was just a young engineer, not a soldier or a fighter. But he knew one thing. Humans survived because they could think, adapt, and act even when everything seemed impossible. He had to find a way to survive. They began moving together cautiously. Lyra led him to a part of the ship she remembered, a room with panels and controls. It was dusty, covered with layers of dirt and alien symbols. Some of the panels flickered faintly. She touched a few and a soft light glowed. "This used to be a control room," she said. "Long ago, before the hunger claimed it. Maybe we can find something here to help us." Kai nodded and started examining the panels. Most of the symbols made no sense, but some seemed like star charts or coordinates. He pressed buttons carefully, and the room lit up with holographic displays. Stars, planets, and paths through space appeared, some glowing, others dark. "The ship, it can travel anywhere," Lyra said quietly. "It is not just alive. It can choose its own paths. And it will take us where it wants, not where we want to go." Kai frowned. "Then we have to control it. If we can't escape, we can at least guide it away from inhabited worlds." They spent hours testing the controls. Every time they made progress, the corridors outside shifted, walls pulsing and twisting as if the ship were alive. The hunger's presence grew stronger, a subtle weight pressing on Kai's mind. He had never felt fear like this before. It was not a simple alarm or danger. It was deep, ancient, and patient. As they worked, the ship reacted. Doors slammed, corridors warped, and shadows moved at the edge of their vision. Sometimes Kai thought he heard whispers, distant voices promising power and survival if only he would give in. He clenched his fists, refusing. He could feel the hunger probing, testing his will. Suddenly, one of the panels lit up with a new symbol. A door appeared in the wall, glowing faintly. Lyra stared at it, hesitant. "I think that leads to the core, the center of the hunger." Kai swallowed. He had no choice. If he wanted to understand what hunted him, he had to see it. He stepped toward the door. The ship pulsed around them, almost like it was alive, almost like it knew what they were about to do. The moment they entered, the air changed. It was warmer, heavier, almost thick. The corridors became narrower, walls stretching up impossibly high. Shadows moved in the corners, and whispers filled their minds. I tried to focus, holding Lyra's hand. She nodded, and they pressed forward together. In the distance, they saw movement. A figure, or maybe many figures, emerged from the darkness. The crew they had seen before, pale and silent, appeared to be in motion now. But their movements were strange, unnatural, as if they were controlled by some other force. They did not speak. They did not blink. They simply watched. Kai felt a chill. He knew the hunger was near. Not the figure, not the crew, but the presence itself. It was patient, aware, and curious, and it had recognized him. "What does it want from us?" he whispered. Lyra shook her head. "I don't know, but I think it wants to understand us. Our courage, our fear, our thoughts. It grows stronger with every reaction we have." Kai gritted his teeth. He had to be careful. Every step, every thought, every heartbeat mattered now. He could feel the hunger watching, and he understood that escaping it would not be simple. They moved deeper, and the ship began to twist in ways that seemed impossible. Doors appeared where walls had been, corridors stretched into infinity, and the hum of the ship grew louder. Kai's chest tightened. The hunger was testing them, shaping the ship to see how they would react, how far they could endure. At one point, Kai stopped. He felt something brush his mind. A memory that was not his own. A glimpse of a world destroyed. A civilization consumed. He staggered back, feeling faint. Lyra caught him. "It's trying to scare you," she said softly. "It wants to see if you break. If you do, it will feed, and it will never stop." Kai nodded, taking a deep breath. He realized that surviving was not just about finding a way out. It was about keeping his mind and courage intact. The hunger fed on fear, and he could not give it that satisfaction. Hours passed, though time seemed meaningless aboard the shifting ship. Every room, every corridor, every shadow was a test. The ship pulsed, breathed, and whispered. Kai and Lyra moved together, supporting each other, using their minds and instincts to avoid traps and illusions. Finally, they reached a chamber unlike any other. The walls were covered with glowing symbols, spinning slowly, and the air vibrated with power. In the center, a faint light pulsed rhythmically. Kai could feel it deep in his chest, almost like the heartbeat he had felt on his first night. "This is the heart," Lyra whispered. "The center of the hunger. We're close now, and we have to be careful. One wrong move, and it will know everything about us." Kai looked around, determined. He had no choice. To survive, to understand, to find a way off this ship, he had to face the hunger, and whatever it was, he knew it had already begun to notice him. He took a deep breath, gripping Lyra's hand, and stepped forward into the chamber, ready to face whatever the ship and the hunger had in store for him. The corridors seemed to shiver. The whispers grew louder. And somewhere deep in the ship, the hunger stirred, patient, ancient, and hungry. Kai's journey had only just begun. Kai and Lyra stood in the heart chamber of the ship, staring at the pulsating light in the center. The air was heavy, almost alive, vibrating with a rhythm that seemed to echo their own heartbeats. Every step they took toward the light made the walls ripple, like water disturbed by a stone. Shadows stretched and twisted, and faint whispers brushed at the edges of their minds. They knew they were close to the source, the hunger itself, but neither fully understood what it wanted or how to face it. Kai's mind raced. He had never felt fear like this, deep and persistent, a feeling that reached past the body into the mind. Every instinct screamed for him to turn and run, but he knew it was impossible. The ship had claimed him. The corridors had trapped them, looping endlessly, bending space and time. There was no simple escape. He had to move forward, or he would be lost forever. Lyra was quiet, her eyes fixed on the glowing heart. "It watches everything," she said softly. "Every thought, every fear. It learns from us, Kai. And the longer we stay, the stronger it gets." Kai swallowed hard. "Then we need to be careful. We can't let it see too much. Not our fear, not our weakness." As they approached the center, the light pulsed faster, brighter. It seemed almost to breathe, expanding and contracting with an awareness that made Kai's chest tighten. Then the whispers grew louder, words forming in his mind. "You are new. You are small. You are meat. You are fear. You are mine." Kai shivered. He grabbed Lyra's hand, holding tightly. "Ignore it," he whispered. "We can't let it control us. The chamber seemed to react to their defiance. The walls rippled violently, and shadows darted along the edges of vision. Kai could see shapes moving, not quite human, not quite machines, figures that seemed made of smoke and light. They circled, watching, waiting. Suddenly, one figure stepped forward. It had a humanoid shape, but its body was transparent in places, glowing from within. Eyes flickered where a face should be, and it moved with a fluid, unnatural grace. Kai's voice shook. Who are you?" The figure did not answer. Instead, it projected images into his mind. Visions of planets consumed, stars extinguished, civilizations erased. Kai stumbled back, nearly falling. He felt the weight of centuries pressing down on him, the patience of a being that had waited 500 years for someone like him. Lyra grabbed his arm. "Focus. It wants to scare you. That's all it is." Kai took a deep breath and forced himself to steady. He had faced fear before, but this was different. This was ancient, intelligent, aware. He realized that running or panicking would only make it stronger. He had to think, act, and survive. They moved closer to the pulsing light. The chamber walls began to shift, forming patterns that resembled stars and constellations. Kai reached out to a panel near the light. It was smooth, cold, and hummed faintly under his fingers. Symbols appeared as he touched it, glowing bright white. He did not understand them, but he sensed they were part of the ship's intelligence, perhaps a key to controlling it or communicating with it. The whispers in his mind shifted. Curious, brave, small, interesting. Give everything. Kai shook his head. "No," he whispered. "We won't give in." Lyra nodded, her eyes bright with determination. "We fight with our minds," she said. "We survive with courage. That is what it cannot take from us." They spent hours exploring the chamber. Every surface seemed alive, every symbol vibrating with energy. Kai noticed that the ship responded to their actions. Lights pulsed in rhythm with their movements, and corridors outside the chamber twisted less violently when they approached cautiously. They realized that the hunger was not invincible. It could be influenced, challenged, even outsmarted if they were clever enough. But the hunger was patient. It did not attack directly. Instead, it tested them, using the ship itself as a weapon. Doors would vanish or appear suddenly, corridors would stretch infinitely, and shadows would rise along the walls to block their path. Each time Kai's fear rose, he could feel the hunger gaining strength. He forced himself to breathe, to calm his mind, to remain aware. At one point, Kai and Lyra found a series of rooms filled with alien machines. Some were broken, others hummed faintly with energy. They realized that the machines could interact with the ship, perhaps even disrupt the hunger's control. Kai worked carefully, pressing panels, observing symbols, and taking notes. Lyra helped, her own memory returning in small flashes. Visions of previous travelers, battles, and tricks the hunger had used before. Suddenly, one of the machines activated on its own. A beam of light shot upward, illuminating the chamber, and the shadows recoiled. The whispers turned frantic, almost angry. Clever. Bold. Small. Intruder. Kai stepped back, heart racing. The hunger had noticed. But he felt something else too, a sense of possibility. They could challenge it, perhaps even escape if they were clever. It was not invincible. It was ancient, patient, and powerful, but it had limits. They explored further, and the chamber revealed hidden pathways. Some led to dead ends, others to rooms filled with artifacts and remnants of civilizations consumed centuries ago. Kai and Lyra walked carefully, learning the patterns, memorizing the twists and turns. The hunger's presence was constant, but they began to sense its rhythms, the subtle cues that indicated its attention. During one pause, Lyra spoke quietly. "I remember, a way to slow it down. A trick travelers used long ago. It's risky, but it might give us time." Kai looked at her. "What is it?" She shook her head. "We have to lure it into focusing on something else. Give it an illusion, a projection of ourselves or another presence. But it requires courage, focus, and perfect timing." Kai nodded. "Then we do it. We have no choice. If we don't, it will learn everything about us, and we won't survive." They prepared carefully. The ship pulsed and shifted around them as if aware of their plan. Shadows gathered, whispers grew louder, pressing into their minds. The hunger was testing them, trying to find cracks in their resolve. Kai focused on controlling his fear, steadying his breathing, and maintaining awareness. Lyra mirrored him, her eyes calm and determined. When they were ready, they activated the projection device. Light and energy swirled around them, creating a copy of themselves moving through the corridors. The ship responded immediately. The shadows and whispers focused on the projection, following its every movement. For the first time, Kai felt the hunger's attention diverted, its patience shaken. They moved carefully through the chamber, past the glowing heart of the ship. The shadows recoiled, the whispers turned chaotic, and the corridors stabilized slightly. Kai realized the device had worked. They had created a temporary advantage, but the hunger was ancient. It did not surrender. Its presence shifted, probing deeper into their minds, searching for cracks. Kai felt a memory he had never shared surface in his thoughts, a fear he had buried. He clenched his fists, forcing it down. Lyra did the same, focusing on courage and survival. Hours passed in tense silence. The chamber seemed alive, pulsing, breathing, with a rhythm tied to their own heartbeats. They knew the hunger had noticed their trick. It would remember. It would adapt. And it would come back stronger. Finally, they paused near the pulsing heart. Kai leaned against the wall, exhausted, but determined. "We did it," he whispered. "We slowed it down, but it's not gone. Not even close." Lyra nodded, her eyes scanning the chamber. "We survived today. That is all that matters. And now we know. We can fight it. We can survive if we are clever, brave, and careful." Kai looked at the glowing heart in the center of the chamber. He understood something profound. The hunger was not just a force of destruction. It was a test. It was patient, ancient, and relentless. But it could be challenged, and humans, with their courage, curiosity, and ingenuity, could survive even against an enemy that had waited 500 years. They moved back through the corridors carefully, the projection device still active, buying them time. Every step, every breath was measured. Every shadow, every whisper reminded them that the hunger had noticed. But they were alive, and for now, that was enough. Kai knew this was only the beginning. The ship was vast, the hunger patient, and the dangers many. But he also knew one thing clearly. Humans could adapt. Humans could survive. And he would not let an ancient, relentless predator claim him without a fight. The corridors stretched endlessly, but Kai and Lyra walked forward, determined. The ship pulsed and whispered, alive and aware. And somewhere deep within, the hunger stirred, curious and patient, but not yet victorious. Kai's journey continued, and with each step, he learned the power of courage, the value of hope, and the strength of human will. The hunger had its eyes on him, but he had his own weapon too. Something it could not take. The human mind. Kai and Lyra moved carefully through the twisting corridors of the ship. The projection device had bought them some time, but they both knew the hunger was aware, patient, and learning. Every corridor they passed shifted slightly, almost as if the ship itself were alive, breathing, and watching their every move. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls, following them at the edges of their vision, disappearing when they turned to look. The whispers returned, soft at first, then growing louder, pressing against their minds, testing their courage. Kai felt a chill. The hunger did not act quickly. It never had. It was patient, calculating. Every sound, every flicker of light, every thought they had was being observed, analyzed, and used against them. But that did not mean they were helpless. He glanced at Lyra, her eyes fixed forward, her steps deliberate and calm. She had survived here longer than he had, and he drew strength from her focus. "This way," Lyra whispered, leading him down a narrow corridor. "I remember a room, some kind of lab. It might have tools, data, or a way to manipulate the ship further. If we can find it, we can understand more about the hunger and maybe even fight it." Kai nodded, trying to steady his breathing. They moved slowly, testing every step. The walls pulsed faintly, the hum of the ship louder than usual, as if it were aware of their plan. Every instinct screamed for him to run, but he forced himself to stay calm. Fear would only make it stronger. When they reached the lab, Kai saw why Lyra had chosen it. The room was filled with ancient devices, panels covered in symbols and screens that displayed star systems and unknown worlds. Dust covered most of it, but the energy pulsing from some machines suggested that they still worked. Kai ran his hand across a panel, feeling a faint vibration. The hunger must have left traces of its awareness here. The ship itself was an extension of it. "Look," Lyra said, pointing to a holographic panel that showed a faint outline of the ship. "We can see the corridors, the rooms, even the chambers that respond to the hunger. Maybe we can find a path that avoids the worst of its attention." Kai studied the display. The ship was vast, almost impossibly so. Corridors twisted in ways that defied geometry, rooms looping back on themselves, chambers appearing and disappearing. It was alive, and yet the map gave them hope. If they moved carefully, they could avoid detection and perhaps reach the core of the ship, where the hunger was strongest. As they planned their next move, a shadow passed across the doorway. Kai tensed. A pale figure stepped into the lab, one of the crew vessels. Its skin was almost translucent, eyes hollow, movements stiff and unnatural. It did not speak. It only watched, its gaze fixed on them. Kai's pulse quickened. The hunger was sending its minions now, testing them, probing for weakness. He reached for a nearby panel, activating a device that projected a bright light across the room. The figure recoiled, retreating into the shadows, but he knew it would return. "We have to keep moving," Lyra whispered. "We can't stay here. It will learn too much if we linger." Kai nodded. They left the lab, moving through the corridors more cautiously than before. The ship shifted around them, walls stretching and twisting, corridors that had been straight now curving in impossible ways. The whispers followed them, echoing in their minds, trying to plant fear and doubt. At one point, Kai felt something brush against his thoughts, a memory that was not his own. A vision of a planet consumed, its skies dark, cities silent. He staggered but did not fall. Lyra caught him, steadying him with her presence. "It's trying to scare you," she said softly. "Focus on reality. Focus on what we can do." Kai nodded, taking a deep breath. He realized that survival depended not just on physical movement, but on mental control. Fear was a weapon the hunger used, and they had to resist it. Hours passed as they moved deeper into the ship. They discovered rooms filled with remnants of civilizations long gone, artifacts, machines, and devices from worlds they had never heard of. The hunger had collected these over centuries, feeding not just on life, but on knowledge and culture. Kai felt a mix of awe and horror. This ship had seen more than any human could imagine, and the hunger was patient enough to learn from every being it encountered. Finally, they reached a chamber with a series of large consoles. Symbols flickered across the screens, and some panels hummed with energy. Lyra stepped forward, touching the controls. "This might help us. If we can understand these, maybe we can influence the ship more directly. Maybe even slow the hunger down." Kai nodded and joined her, examining the panels. He pressed buttons carefully, watching as the ship responded. Lights pulsed in rhythm with their movements, corridors stabilized slightly, and shadows in the distance shifted away. For the first time, they felt a measure of control, but the hunger was aware. The air grew heavier, the whispers louder, pressing directly into their minds. It was testing them, probing for weaknesses. Kai felt fear rising but forced himself to focus. Every step, every action mattered. They could not afford to falter. They worked for hours, deciphering symbols, activating panels, and mapping the corridors. Slowly, they began to understand the patterns, the logic of the ship, and the ways the hunger manipulated space and time. Kai realized that the key to survival was patience, cleverness, and courage. They could not defeat the hunger outright, but they could challenge it, evade it, and perhaps even control parts of the ship. As they prepared to leave the lab, a sudden vibration shook the room. The panels flickered, and the shadows in the corners stretched toward them. The hunger was aware of their activity, its presence pressing directly against their minds. Kai grabbed Lyra's arm. "It knows. We have to move. Now." They ran through the corridors, moving faster than before, but still cautiously. The ship twisted and bent, corridors stretching endlessly, shadows darting along the walls. The whispers grew frantic, as if the hunger were angry. They reached a junction where several corridors converged. Kai studied the paths. One led deeper into the ship, toward the core. Another looped back toward the lab, a trap of sorts. A third led to an unknown area, dark and silent. "We go forward," Kai said firmly. "We can't turn back." "Not now. We have to face it." Lyra nodded. Together they moved down the corridor toward the unknown, toward the heart of the hunger itself. The ship pulsed with life around them, walls shifting, lights flickering, corridors bending in impossible ways. Every step was a test, every breath a challenge. Suddenly a shadow rose from the floor ahead of them. It was large, amorphous, and shifting, a mass of smoke and light. It blocked their path, moving with awareness and intelligence. The whispers in their minds turned urgent, almost frantic. The hunger was testing them directly now. Kai and Lyra stopped, holding their ground. The shadow moved closer, probing, observing. Kai felt a memory he had buried deep surface in his mind, a fear of failing, of being alone, of being powerless. He clenched his fists, forcing the fear down, Refusing to give the hunger the satisfaction, Lyra stepped beside him. Stay calm. Focus on what we can do. Remember the lab, the projection. We have tools, and we have each other. That is stronger than fear. Kai nodded, drawing courage from her words. He activated the projection device again, creating copies of themselves to confuse the shadow. The shadow recoiled uncertain, the whispers growing chaotic. For the first time they saw the hunger hesitate. It had not expected cunning or courage from its prey. They moved past the shadow slowly, carefully, every step measured. The corridors twisted and bent, but they held their focus. The shadow followed for a time, then dissipated into the walls. The whispers faded slightly. They had survived the first direct test. Kai and Lyra paused, exhausted but determined. We're learning, Kai said quietly. We can survive this. We can outsmart it, at least for now. Lyra nodded. But it will remember. It is patient. It has centuries of experience. We can't let our guard down, not for a moment. Kai took a deep breath, steadying himself. They had faced the hunger more directly than ever before and survived. They had learned that courage, focus, and cleverness were as powerful as any weapon. And yet, they knew the true challenge lay ahead. The core of the ship was close, and that was where the hunger's presence would be strongest. They continued moving, careful, silent, their minds focused on survival. The corridors twisted endlessly, the shadows following at the edges of their vision, and the whispers pressed constantly against their thoughts. But Kai felt something grow within him, a quiet confidence, the knowledge that humans could endure, adapt, and survive even against a predator that had waited 500 years. The journey was far from over. The hunger was patient, ancient, and relentless. But Kai and Lyra had survived the first trials, learned to navigate the ship, and discovered that courage, ingenuity, and hope could turn the tide, even in the face of an enemy older than time itself. They stepped forward, deeper into the unknown, ready to face whatever the eternal hunger would throw at them next. Kai and Lyra moved cautiously through the endless corridors of the ship. The projection device hummed faintly, creating copies of themselves to confuse the hunger, but they knew it would not last forever. Every pulse of the ship reminded them that the eternal hunger was patient, intelligent, and aware. They had survived its first direct tests, but now the real challenge was near. The core, the heart of the hunger itself. As they advanced, the corridors became darker, narrower. The walls pulsed rhythmically, a sound like a heartbeat vibrating through the floor. Shadows flickered along the edges of their vision, but now they seemed faster, more aware, moving with a purpose. The whispers in their minds had grown urgent, almost angry, probing their thoughts, dredging up every hidden fear. Kai pressed his hand against the wall for support. It's stronger now, he whispered. We've made it mad. Lyra nodded, her grip firm on his arm. It tests our courage and patience. We have to stay focused. It wants us to panic, to make mistakes. Don't give it that. They turned a corner, and the corridor ahead opened into a vast chamber. The ceiling arched high, lost in shadows, and the floor glowed faintly with the same rhythm as the pulsing heart they had seen before. In the center of the chamber was a faint, almost imperceptible shape, moving slowly. It was enormous, like a shadow made solid, and it shifted, stretching and changing as if alive. Kai's stomach tightened. He had seen hints of this before, the hunger. But now, in the open, it was undeniable. The presence was overwhelming, ancient, patient, and aware. It moved as if it knew exactly where they would step, watching their every thought and reaction. It's huge, Kai whispered, barely audible. I thought it was just a presence. I didn't know it could take shape like that. Lyra studied it calmly, though her eyes were wary. It adapts. It learns from us. Every move we make, every fear we feel, it uses my... But we have something it cannot take. Kai glanced at her. What's that? Our minds? Our courage? Our will to survive. They moved cautiously into the chamber, keeping low, shadows masking their presence. The hunger did not attack outright. It did not need to. Its presence alone was enough to instill terror, to bend reality around them, to make every step uncertain. The walls pulsed, corridors bending impossibly, shadows flickering, and whispers probing their minds. Kai forced himself to breathe steadily, to focus. He reminded himself that fear made the hunger stronger. If he could remain calm, clever, and cautious, they might survive. The shadow shifted closer, moving with awareness, sensing them, testing their reactions. Kai and Lyra pressed forward, using the projection device to distract it. For a moment it hesitated, confused. That gave them a chance to advance. They reached a console near the edge of the chamber, its symbols glowing faintly. Lyra touched the panels, her fingers moving with precision. This might allow us to communicate, or at least influence its attention. We can't destroy it, but maybe we can manipulate it. Kai nodded, examining the screens. They displayed faint energy patterns, corridors, and pulses that seemed linked to the hunger itself. If we can change the flow of energy, maybe we can create space to move safely, or even slow it down. As they worked, the hunger pulsed, a wave of energy that pressed directly against their minds. Whispers became voices, words threatening, probing, taunting. Kai felt memories he had buried deep, failures, fears, doubts, surfacing against his will. He clenched his fists, forcing them down. Lyra mirrored him, steadying herself with focus and determination. The shadow surged forward, sensing their manipulation. It moved quickly now, faster, almost furious. The corridors seemed to bend toward them, walls closing in, ceilings stretching higher, floors dropping away. Kai realized the hunger was testing limits, trying to break them to see if they could endure under pressure. Lyra spoke calmly. Focus. Use your mind. The ship responds to awareness, to cleverness. Don't give in. Kai pressed more buttons on the console, carefully rerouting energy pulses. He watched as the glowing pattern shifted, corridors stabilizing slightly. The hunger shadow paused, uncertain, a hesitation that had not been there before. They had slowed it, if only a little. Suddenly a sound echoed through the chamber, a low, resonant hum, almost like a growl. Shadows darted toward them from every corner. The hunger was aware again, its attention focused directly on them. Kai felt his chest tighten. Every instinct screamed for him to run, but he knew that would only make it stronger. We keep moving, he said, voice steady, despite the fear. Step by step. We don't stop. We survive. They advanced slowly, the projection device active, creating confusion and distraction. The hunger shadow followed, but it was divided, pulled toward multiple points, struggling to understand which was real and which was false. Kai and Lyra used every trick they had learned, observing patterns, timing movements, and avoiding direct attention whenever possible. Hours seemed to pass, though time aboard the eternal hunger was meaningless. They moved through chambers filled with relics, machines, and strange artifacts. Each room seemed alive, responding to their presence, shifting in subtle ways. The hunger tested them continually, sending shadows, manipulating corridors, and pressing against their minds. Kai realized that survival depended not just on cleverness, but on understanding the hunger itself. It was ancient, patient, and intelligent, but it was also predictable in patterns. It learned from mistakes, and it tested reactions. If they stayed calm and observant, they could exploit its limitations. At one point, they reached a room with walls covered in glowing symbols. The pulsing energy was strong here, almost overwhelming. Kai felt a pressure in his mind, memories surfacing, fear and doubt pressing. He swallowed, forcing himself to focus. Lyra guided him, her calm presence helping steady his thoughts. We have to interface with this, she whispered. If we can manipulate the energy here, we might gain a real advantage. It's risky, but it's the only way forward. Kai nodded, hands steady despite the pressure. They activated panels, rerouted energy, and watched as the glowing patterns shifted. The hunger reacted immediately, waves of energy surging, shadows darting, corridors twisting violently, but they held their focus, steadying the flow, creating the zone of relative calm in the chaos. For a brief moment the shadows faltered. The whispers quieted. The hunger's presence wavered, uncertain. Kai and Lyra exchanged a glance. Hope. They had found a weakness, a way to influence the ship and the hunger's attention. But the hunger was patient. It did not surrender. Its presence pulsed through the corridors, manipulating the ship, testing them, and probing for cracks. Every step, every thought, every reaction mattered. Kai realized that surviving meant being clever, brave, and unyielding. They continued deeper, moving carefully, shadows receding slightly under their influence. The corridors twisted less violently, the ship's rhythm becoming more manageable. The hunger had noticed their cleverness, but it had not yet overcome them. They were learning, adapting, and surviving in a world designed to break them. Finally, they paused near a chamber filled with glowing energy conduits. Lyra studied the symbols, her fingers moving with precision. This might allow us to influence the core directly, she said. It's dangerous, but it could give us a real advantage against the hunger. Kai nodded. Then we do it, step by step. We stay focused, and we survive. The shadows stirred in the corridors outside, a reminder that the hunger was never far. The whispers pressed against their minds, but they held firm, hearts steady, and minds focused. Kai understood something crucial in that moment. The hunger was powerful, patient, and intelligent, but humans had something it could not take: courage, ingenuity, and the will to survive. They would not give in. With careful steps, precise timing, and calm determination, Kai and Lyra advanced into the chamber, ready to challenge the hunger more directly. They were close to the core, and the true test awaited, but they were not afraid. They had survived this long, learned the patterns, and discovered their own strength. The eternal hunger waited, patient and aware, but Kai and Lyra were ready. They had survived 500 years of patience and cunning in a single journey through the endless, shifting corridors. And now, the final confrontation was near. Kai and Lyra stood at the edge of the final chamber. The corridors behind them had shifted into unrecognizable shapes, and the shadows of the ship's walls stretched endlessly. Before them lay the heart of the eternal hunger, a vast chamber of glowing energy, pulsating like a heartbeat and stretching far beyond sight. The air vibrated with power, a pressure against their minds and chests, whispering words they could barely understand. It was patient, ancient, aware of every thought, every heartbeat. Kai took a deep breath. "This is it," he said quietly. "Everything we've done has led here." Lyra nodded, her face steady but tense. "We have learned its patterns. We know how it reacts. We have the projection device, the lab data, and our courage. We can survive this, Kai. But we must stay calm. One mistake and it could consume us completely." The chamber's walls pulsed and shimmered, shadows moving across the glowing conduits of energy. I could feel the hunger's awareness pressing directly on his mind, probing, testing, seeking fear, hesitation, weakness. He clenched his fists and focused on calm, steady breaths. Lyra mirrored him, and together they stepped forward, projecting copies of themselves to distract the hunger. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the shadows gathered in the center of the chamber, forming a massive shape, constantly shifting. It was the hunger, taking form from the energy around it, a vast, intelligent predator that had waited 500 years for prey like them. Its presence pressed down, suffocating, testing every nerve, every thought. Kai felt a memory rise, one he had never shared, a fear of failing those who depended on him, of being powerless. He forced it down, holding his mind steady. Lyra did the same, focusing on courage and survival. They could not let the hunger feed on their minds. The hunger pulsed, waves of energy radiating through the chamber. The projection device flickered under the strain, but Kai held it steady. Copies of themselves moved through corridors, confusing the hunger, splitting its attention. The shadows surged, then faltered, unsure which targets were real. For the first time, Kai felt a glimmer of hope. Lyra whispered, "Now, we manipulate the energy, use the conduits. Focus on the pulse. If we can shift it, we might slow it enough to escape or control part of the ship." Kai nodded, moving toward the glowing conduits. He traced patterns, rerouted pulses, and watched as the energy responded. The hunger roared, not a sound in the air, but a roar in their minds, waves of pressure that threatened to break their focus. Shadows swirled violently, but the projections moved deliberately, drawing its attention and giving Kai and Lyra space. Hours passed in tense concentration. The hunger pressed, tested, and probed, but Kai and Lyra remained steady. They synchronized with the energy pulses, learned the rhythm of the chamber, and subtly shifted it to their advantage. Slowly, they felt the presence weaken, as if the hunger were confused by their cleverness and calm. But it was not defeated. It surged again, stronger this time, attacking their minds with visions of destruction, despair, and hopelessness. Kai saw worlds destroyed, civilizations erased, friends lost. He staggered, almost losing control. Lyra grabbed his arm, steadying him. "Focus on courage," she said firmly. "Fear feeds it, hope weakens it. Remember, Kai, we survive because we can endure, because we can adapt, because we do not give up." Kai steadied himself, breathing deeply. He realized that the hunger had underestimated humans. It had faced life for centuries, but humans had something it could not take: ingenuity, courage, and determination. Every test, every shadow, every pulse was a challenge, but they could meet it if they kept their minds and hearts steady. Together, they worked on the conduits, shifting the energy, creating pockets of stability, and using the projection device to distract the hunger. The massive shadow twisted and roared, trying to break their concentration. The ship pulsed violently, corridors bending, walls stretching impossibly. Yet Kai and Lyra moved with precision, patience, and calm. Suddenly, a new insight came to Kai. He understood that the hunger's power was tied to the ship's awareness of fear and hesitation. If they could maintain perfect focus, act decisively, and project courage and will, they could create a zone where the hunger could not reach effectively. "We can do this," Kai whispered. "We don't need to destroy it. We just need to control the pulse, redirect its attention, and survive long enough to escape." Lyra smiled faintly. "Exactly. Humans survive because we endure, because we adapt, because we never give up. The hunger may be ancient, but it cannot break our minds if we refuse to let it." They advanced deeper, carefully manipulating the energy conduits, adjusting the pulse, and coordinating their projections. The hunger surged, immense and furious, but it was confused, its attention divided, its influence weakened by their ingenuity. Shadows shifted, flickered, and faltered. Whispers roared in their minds, but Kai and Lyra ignored them, focusing solely on the pulse and their own determination. Minutes, or maybe hours, passed. Time felt meaningless. Then, slowly, they felt a shift. The hunger recoiled slightly, its presence less overwhelming. The projections had confused it enough, and the conduits had allowed Kai and Lyra to stabilize part of the chamber. For the first time, they felt the possibility of victory. Not over the hunger, but over its immediate threat. "We can control part of it," Kai whispered. "We can move safely now. We can escape." Lyra nodded. "Yes. Step by step. One careful move at a time." They moved through the chamber cautiously, the projections still active, keeping the hunger occupied. The shadows surged once more, but Kai and Lyra anticipated each movement, adapting instantly, never hesitating, never panicking. They understood the rhythm of the hunger, the limits of its power, and the strength of human courage. Finally, they reached a corridor leading toward the exit. The walls pulsed less violently, shadows flickered without coherence, and the whispers were weaker. They were close to leaving the core chamber, to stepping into a part of the ship where they could find a way to control the corridors and escape. Kai glanced at Lyra. "We made it this far. Nothing can stop us now." She smiled faintly. "The hunger will remember us, but we survived. That is what matters. And humans endure. We survive. That is our power." Step by step, they moved through the corridor, the hunger pulsed behind them, a patient and aware presence, but no longer fully in control. They had survived the tests, faced the ancient predator directly, and endured. The corridors led them to a chamber filled with consoles and panels. Kai studied the systems, realizing that they could guide the ship's path, perhaps even take it somewhere far from inhabited worlds, away from future prey. He and Lyra worked quickly, carefully, rerouting energy, stabilizing the ship, and creating a path to freedom. The hunger pulsed one last time, a massive wave of awareness and power, but it recoiled from their cleverness, patience, and courage. It had waited 500 years, but it could not break them. The projections had confused it, their steady minds had resisted its probing, and their determination had outlasted its patience. Kai felt relief, a deep and powerful feeling. They had survived. They had faced an enemy older than any human history, and they had endured. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "We did it," she whispered. "We survived the hunger, and that is what matters." Kai nodded, eyes still scanning the glowing corridors. "We have learned something important. Humans survive because we endure.
Because we adapt.
Because we never give up. And no matter how patient or powerful an enemy is, that courage cannot be taken." They continued moving, the corridors stabilizing under their careful guidance. The ship pulsed gently, its awareness still present, but no longer overwhelming. They had learned its patterns, manipulated its energy, and endured the ancient tests of fear and patience. Finally, they reached a chamber that seemed like an exit, a way to leave the core and regain control over the ship. Kai and Lyra stepped inside, taking a deep breath. Hunger was patient, but they had learned the power of courage, ingenuity, and determination. They were alive, and that meant victory. Kai looked at Lyra. "We survived, and we'll keep surviving. No matter what the hunger tries next, humans endure. That is what makes us strong." Lyra nodded. "Yes, and now we move forward, step by step, together. Humans survive because we do not give up, and that is more than any ancient predator can take from us." The ship hummed softly around them, shadows fading, the pulse slowing. The hunger waited, patient and aware, but it had been outsmarted. Kai and Lyra had faced it directly, endured its tests, and survived. They had learned the ultimate lesson. Courage, intelligence, and human will were stronger than even the oldest and most patient of predators. Step by step they moved forward, leaving the core behind, guiding the ship carefully through its twisting corridors. The eternal hunger had waited 500 years, but it had met humans, and humans survived. Kai knew the journey was not over. There would be challenges ahead, dangers they could not foresee, and tests they could not predict. But he also knew this truth clearly. Humanity endures, adapts, and survives. And no ancient hunger, no matter how patient or powerful, could take that away. They stepped into the final corridor, ready to guide the ship to safety, ready to face whatever awaited beyond the darkness. They were alive and they had proven something ancient and timeless. Humans survive. And that was more than any hunger could ever consume.